Let's get more now on the news that Downing Street says that rules allowing EU citizens to live and work freely in the UK will cease immediately in the event of a no-deal Brexit at the end of October. Boris Johnson and the Home Secretary Priti Patel have rejected the previous government of Theresa May, her plan to allow freedom of movement to continue until January 2021. They have reiterated that nothing would change for EU nationals already here. Well, we can discuss this with the Conservative MP Alberto Costa, who's been a long-time campaigner for the rights of EU citizens in the EU and in the UK. And he joins me now from Sicily. Thank you very much for being with us. So a change of policy, it appears, on these rules from the government of Boris Johnson.
Well, look, it appears. That's the key words here. It appears. The reality is what's being proposed today is wholly unworkable in practice. Let me explain why. 2.6 million EU nationals have yet to register for the so-called settled status scheme. So I pose this question to the government. If we come out on a no-deal basis without a new legal system for migrants, how will the government distinguish between those 2.6 million lawfully resident EU nationals in the UK from any new EU migrants coming into the UK? It's a wholly impractical proposal. As a lawyer, the reason I've been championing this for 3 years is I want to deliver Brexit. I voted for Brexit 3 times in the House of Commons. But what I want to see is a smart Brexit, that we come out of the EU in a smooth and orderly manner so that we come out of a legal system and we replace it with another. What's being proposed today, sadly, is nothing of the sort. It's just political puff that's given to the media to make it appear that these two individuals are really strong about coming out of the EU. Let me finally say this. Vote Leave promised in 2016 that coming out of the EU would not impact negatively on EU nationals. Indeed, they said that they would automatically have all their rights guaranteed. Sadly, none of those rights have been entrenched in law. In other words, there's not been any legislation passed by the House of Commons to protect their rights. And the reason that that's so negative is not just for the EU nationals, but it's also for the 1.3 million British citizens living and working in the EU. If we come out with no deal, the British government, by its actions, would be terminating the rights of fellow British citizens. They would lose the right to healthcare access, they would lose the right to pensions access, they would lose the right of frontier working, they might even lose residency rights. This is really serious stuff. And that's why I've been campaigning for 3 years to protect those 5 million people.
But given all you've said then, this is really serious stuff, you're very worried about what the government are proposing, would you then join the rebels against the government's pursuing a no-deal Brexit? Would you, in other words, in the Commons, would you vote to stop a no-deal Brexit?
Look, there are many ways politically to deal with this. That's why I wrote to Boris Johnson. I was one of those signatories last week. The reason I wrote to Boris is to help him honour his pledge. He promised me, the British public, through the House of Commons, that he wants to guarantee the rights of EU nationals. Now, ending free movement on the 31st of October in a no-deal basis does nothing of the sort. It creates legal chaos. What I want to do is help the Prime Minister. I want to help the Home Office ensure that as we come out of the EU, there is a new immigration system already in place. So let me propose a solution to all of this. The solution is, when Parliament returns the first week of September, for the government to propose a very simple immigration bill that entrenches in law those rights that EU nationals enjoy, and by so doing, we can also protect the British citizens in the EU in the event of no deal. So the ball is firmly in the British government's court. Let them honour their pledge to protect the rights of citizens.
Well, you mentioned at the beginning that the 2.5 million people who haven't yet applied for settled status, some people watching this might say, well, why don't they just get on with signing up for special status? They've got from now until the end of next year, I think. If they do that, there's absolutely no problem.
Well, I wish that was the case, but the settled status scheme, there's nothing that's gone through the House of Commons. There's no legislation underpinning that scheme. That scheme is just a Home Office rule. It can be changed at the stroke of a pen. That's not entrenching rights. But moreover, it's not that it just doesn't entrench rights. The reality is, if 2.6 million people have yet to register, the reality is they cannot register between now and the end of October. The Home Office system couldn't cope with that. So I pose the question once again, if we end free movement of people at the end of October on a no-deal basis, how will we distinguish between lawfully resident EU nationals in the UK from those EU nationals coming into the UK post-Brexit? And secondly, how do we guarantee the rights of 1.3 million British citizens living in the EU in the event of no deal? These are big considerations, and I trust Boris. He's promised me directly that he does want to protect the rights of citizens.
Okay.
So he's got to honour that pledge.
Okay. Conservative MP Alberto Costa, thank you very much for joining us. Thank you.